episode 75. Am I ready for a branch store? Could be your first or sixth, right, Greg?
Right.
Hey, great to have support from my sponsor, Jasper. You know, performance and reliability, that's what Jasper's remanufactured diesel engines provide mile after mile. Jasper's running complete engines are dynamometer tested with horsepower and torque ratings recorded. There's a nationwide warranty included, too, with each engine. Talk about dependable service. Thank you so much from Jasper. And don't forget, fleets are keeping vehicles longer. Great diesel program. Hey, we're excited about today because people are always thinking about branch stores. I would just love to stop for a moment and remind you that last week our topic was, can David beat Goliath? It was a great show. If you've not listened to it, please go out, even if you just catch the audio version of it. And next week, and I think you guys are all going to agree, really important topic next week, improving your soft skills, how to lead and spread a positive vibe. Boy, I think we almost need that to be a good branch leader, Greg.
Right.
So
yeah, it's really, when you have multiple locations, you're no longer a technician, you're no longer a service writer, you're really not even a store manager anymore. You are the psychologist. You're the people person. You're the strategist. You're the visionary. And it's a completely different role than what most shop owners, even myself, when I got into this business, I had no idea that I was going to be a multi-shop owner one day and that I would be in the position of a CEO that I'm in now. I just thought, hey, I'm going to be a technician for a long time. I can fix cars better than most guys that I work with. I'm good with people. I can sell service. I'll be just fine. And I didn't start out how, it's not like probably nobody in this room here, started with an MBA and said, I'm going to be in the automotive industry and I'm going to have a big strategic plan and I'm going to have 50 locations. And that's what you started out to do right out of college. Most of us kind of tumbled into the successes that we have now. And so what I want to do is be able to, through this broadcast, is be able to help people take a step back and go, okay, let's be a little more strategic about growing into multiple locations. Because you're right, Carm, the industry is changing. It's where we're going to be going. It's the David versus Goliath. You got, there's big companies out there, Mavis and Carl Icahn and other groups like that are just scooping up shops left and right because they see the consolidation movement and how they can capitalize on it. So, how do we do that as being Davids?
Got it. Hey, I want to introduce my panel. Thank you for starting out. Greg Bunch from Aspen Auto Clinic. He's got 5 stores, Colorado Springs and in Denver.
Yes, sir.
Been on a couple of times with us. Please, when you find the show notes next Wednesday, you can click on a little icon and listen to all of Greg's previous episodes. And he's also the founder of Transformers Mastermind. Glad to have you, man.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Also with me is Dwayne Myers, Dynamic Automotive, Frederick, Maryland. 4 stores. And many
and growing.
Yes.
Working on it.
Yeah, many times on the podcast, and a great contributor and a great friend. You all are great friends. And Brian Sump's with us, 2 locations in Denver. Was that with me in episode 244? Great story from this guy. So, Brian, let me ask you this question. I've done it once, so that means I can do it again, right?
Yeah, in theory it does. I guess it's just like the first time you hit a baseball or the first time you ask a girl out and she says yes. I mean, it's a confidence building thing. And then I guess to those same analogies, there's the countless strikeouts, swinging the bat. There's also the times that she said no. But yes, having it done once should imply that you could do it again.
So is that how you started? Is that how you grew your second branch?
In our case, we got to watch a lot of peers do it first, and it scared me. Greg Bunch and I have been friends for a lot of years. Maybe 8 years ago, I watched him and some others go through this process, and honestly, I thought to myself, if this is what it's like, I don't want to do it because it seemed high stress. It seemed like you could calculate.
It wasn't seem like it is high stress.
Okay, let's be real.
It was high stress.
We like to use the word stretch, so it will stretch you.
Yes.
But yeah, there's the concept of, I guess getting to the why you would do something like that. And one of the things that I pose is the E-myth. Michael Gerber wrote about this philosophy that in business, you'll work less and make more money. That can happen, but by and large, it's not the norm.
Right.
So when you think about growing stores, why would you do that? And if you're going to go to number 2 or 3 or 6 or 10, you're going to experience similar things as number 1. It just may look a little different. It might be a different type of magnitude. So yeah, the why is a big part of the growth plan.
Dwayne, is it about the money?
Partially. It always comes down to the money, but really it's about your brand, about what you want to do. You want to grow your footprint to be able to do more. And really, I look at it now after 20 some years, it's about making opportunities for your team. When you become known and you have a culture of growing and promoting from within, you need to look for the next right opportunity so that you can keep your team moving and growing. And it does snowball and multiply, but that was like step 50. There was a lot in between, because when we opened our second location, I didn't have a Greg Bunch or a Brian Slump to look at. We didn't have anybody. We were one of the first to go to a second store, and we didn't do so well. It was definitely a struggle. So it wasn't about the money. We just wanted more, and we wanted the first store we rented. We wanted to own the property, and that was our first where we actually owned it. So that was one of the big reasons for starting number 2 for us.
3 partners, now 4 stores, and soon to be hopefully more. The point is that when you went to your 4th store, you started to have to think about the people equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once it got past, that's the thing is, which I know will be coming up, is, one person can't run everything,
right.
And at least not be there doing the day-to-day operations. They can guide and lead the business, but someone else has to be there. And we finally crested that to where we weren't able to be everywhere at one time. So now we look at more of development of our team, which to me, that is the number one thing before you expand.
Greg, you talk a lot about the DNA of yourself and being able to duplicate yourself, which is one of the greatest challenges of trying to be that, if you will, hub of that wheel. How does...
Right.
What would the best advice on that?
Well, it is probably the most difficult thing to do. I given the analogy, you had a clear glass of water, and that was kind of the shop when I first started it. It was me, my wife at the time. I ended up hiring a friend of mine just to help out, sweep floors and help change oil and that kind of thing. And I was there every day, 12 hours a day, sometimes 6 days a week. So the company was my DNA. And every time, think of like food coloring, right? You put a drop in the water, and that's every new employee. But if you're there and you have your influence on them, and they see how you operate, they're copying what you do, you're teaching, guiding, instructing, and leading them, that water is going to stay that nice colored blue. And then, and you see this, you've interviewed a lot of people that decide not to go multi-store because they want to preserve that. And they know that they're going to have that challenge, as Dwayne was talking about. Once you grow past that, okay, how do I keep my water blue in each multiple location? Because what happens, it happened to me, Dwayne, it probably happened to you through this. And I know you have partners, so that changes a little bit. But almost everybody that I've talked to is going through the growing pains, find out that now you're adding, okay, a guy, he ran a really good Midas, but his bottle is drops are red, and you got another guy that had a great European shop, and he did well, and he's working for you now, and he was the purple dye. Well, you start putting those different colors in, and if you don't have a strategic way of getting all those people on the same page, all of a sudden you have this brown, murky water. And so you have cultures, and you have management styles, and you have leadership styles and selling styles and diagnostic styles that come from all these different directions, and trying to clear that up and put it together. I wish I could say it's just there's some easy answer, but there's really not. To me, it's people development and making sure that you're delegated and elevated yourself enough to be in a role that you can have those key people around you that still understand and work within your DNA. And sometimes that means you get somebody that looks great on paper, but they're purple and they're going to stay purple. They're not going to be the blue color that you need them to be, and you need to get them out of your pool as soon as possible. And
Greg,
so spending a lot of time getting those people with the DNA and training them is really the key.
Greg, I was impressed in our interview that we did a while back now, and you were talking about, I may have asked you the question on growing to the next branch, and I asked you, how are you training your people? And you say you've really got to bite the bullet and have the payroll in one of your locations or in multiple locations, and you've got to go through a heavy training process. I mean, part of the upstart cost, and I would love to talk about the pro forma here coming up with you, Brian, but you've got to have that money ready to invest in training.
Right. And we made that mistake. I think I shared that with you on my first podcast was, my 6th door, I had the lease, I had the building remodeled, and I had 2 months free rent, which I negotiated. Yay me. Well, the manager that we had slated to do that was not ready to manage. He should have worked for me for a year as a service advisor, and then we really would have been able to see if he was ready to run it. I would have been much better off leaving that building vacant for however long I needed to make sure and vet that I had a good manager. And it became a snowball. Well, he didn't work out. So the next guy, we just kind of threw him to the wolves and he didn't work out. And then the next person didn't work out. And then all of a sudden, your customers are seeing 4 new managers in a 2-year time period. And it's really hard to grab that traction back. So, if I could go back and counsel myself, it would have been like, hey, just pay the rent and make sure that you have a fully trained staff that are really ready to rock and roll before you open the doors.
Brian, cultivating the team. I mean, wow. Is that going to be like one of the most critical pieces?
Yeah. Early on, cultivating the team was what sort of pushed us to grow.
Right.
We had a great general manager and a great number 2 in command and then a junior advisor. And they were pushing up against the ceiling of growth and opportunity. And in fact, it was really our team that kind of was the impetus behind our growth because if a number 2 guy sees a ceiling underneath the number 1, he might walk. So you almost get forced to create opportunities. Dwayne talked about that a little bit, and certain Greg's talked about cultivating talent. If you want to use the word discipleship, we kind of use that a little bit, passing and imparting on to others what you know and how to do things. And the story, I won't say it here, but there's a story about cutting the ends off the roast beef that I love to tell my staff. Maybe there'll be time for that later.
Oh, can we do that now? Is it a long one?
I can keep it pretty short. It's really simple. A little girl's with her mom cooking in the kitchen, and mom's making a roast. So she cuts the ends off the roast and she puts it in the pan. Little girl says, "Mom, why did you cut the ends off the roast?" Mom kind of looks at her and says, "Well, that's a great question. Why don't you go ask Grandma?" So she goes into the living room and she says, "Grandma, why do we cut the ends off the roast?" And then Grandma kind of looked at her a little puzzled and says, "Yeah, that's a great question. Why don't you go ask Great Grandma?" Mm-hmm. She goes down the hallway, knocks on Great Grandma's door, says, Grandma, I have to ask you a really important question." Great Grandma says, "What is it, sweetie?" She says, "Why do we cut the ends off the roast?" And Great Grandma says, she chuckles and she says, "So it'll fit in the pan." The key to that is that there's these things that are passed down through, leadership and down through levels. And if one guy leaves your organization, there's a hole there. And stories and the why we do things and how we do things, to Greg's point, are really, really important. And to that DNA, if you cut somebody out of a DNA chain generationally, like physically in the family, there's a gap there. Or if somebody, whatever, you adopt somebody, that DNA doesn't get passed on. So all that to say, go ahead.
It's a great story of just doing the same old thing and not even knowing and remembering the reasons why you do it.
Yeah.
So guys, let me offer you a question. I'm a shop owner, got this great team, 8-bay place. I've always thought in the back of my mind, maybe I've got to branch out, look for an opportunity, maybe make an acquisition, go to store 2, go to store 3, and I've got this great talent inside my place. Is that the right reason to look at someone and try to build a business around a single person?
Maybe I chime in real quickly on it. The reason can exist, but you have to envision if that person wasn't there, what would be your backup plan? It can force you to get out of your comfort zone and start building, but you can't necessarily build it upon that. I mean, there's arguments for, and Greg We'll speak to this about his vision plan, potentially maybe about how do you retain the foreman and the general manager in a store. And whether you have true equity partners like Dwayne, or whether you're like Greg and I and you're the sole owner, you have to create partners. And so you can do it around that person, but you've got to be able to have a plan, a contingency plan, if they're not there, to bring the next person in. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, in our mastermind group, it's really specific about either people that are multi-store or going multi-store, and this exact topic is usually brought up at every meeting. And what Brian is referring to, there's a ESOP, right? Employee stock option programs. There's actual partnerships like what Dwayne's in. And Brian and I have been on a journey kind of exploring what they call synthetic stock or phantom stock. It is a legal agreement, but it doesn't put somebody actually in ownership, where you're actually filing tax returns together, but it gives them, in essence, an ownership piece into your business. And then, they would get a payout either when they're looking to buy you out, or you sell your company, or if there's a triggered event, that you have a legal contract of how that affects them. So in essence, they get the privilege of ownership, feeling and financial rewards without actually having to file a tax return with you. And a lot of owners I talk to, including myself, are really hesitant to bring on a partner per se, like I said, in a tax return. But this is a way to kind of put some golden handcuffs on our key leaders, and so that we can grow with them.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dwayne. We're looking to expand, I think, of people, location, finance. What would be your number one goal to look for a really good location?
Location. It's either the best location yeah. or first in, and we've done both. Locations by far king. You don't have to market it to death when you have the best location. You got to do your research, not only what's there, but what's coming. Our fourth store, the interchange is still not open. It's probably now a couple of weeks. It's a year and a half overdue, but we'll go from the back of the neighborhood to the very front, and everyone will have to go by our door, to hundreds and if not thousands of businesses. So we'll go from the guy in the back to the guy up front. And that was where we forward looked. You got to look at what's coming, not just what you have in the neighborhood already.
Have any of you just selected a branch because it was there, the rent was cheap, it was a former shop, for all these great excuses, and regretted it and said, well, yeah, I guess when you get bigger, better, and smarter, you get smarter on picking locations. And so what advice could you give to someone who is ready to jump into their second store?
That's a great question, Carm, and we get that brought up quite a bit. If you're a European specialist, we found that location may not be quite as important, because your people will drive by 8 or 9 general repair shops to get to your shop if you're a Mercedes or BMW or Volkswagen, Audi specialist. But if you're going to be in the general repair market, like Dwayne said, location is everything, and having it not only visible, but having it in a good demographic. You could work just as hard in a shop that's in Automotive Row in the back alley, and never achieve what you could doing that same amount of effort in a shop that's got great visibility and drive-by traffic. So, people freak out when they hear that, people are paying $15,000, $18,000, $22,000 rent for a location. How can people do that? How can people do that? Because those people and a lot of the franchises, a lot of the companies that you see have these bright, shiny buildings, they understand the value of having that prime location. So not all my locations are prime locations, and we pay for it. So as my company grows and we grow and expand and look for acquisitions or new builds or new buildings, we are absolutely looking at traffic patterns and financial demographics and making sure that it's a good match. And there's a science to it and there's an art to it. Make sense?
Yeah, Carm, our number 2 store, we kind of did what you said. It used to be a shop. We could buy it. It was ours, so it was natural. We just bought it. But it took years to get it successful because it's not in the best demographic area. That's why you got to do your research. But at that point we were still learning. So now I recommend that you do your homework before you buy. Just owning it's not enough. It's got to be the right move, or you're going to go backwards.
Right.
Brian, do the homework, the finance side. Give us a quick overview of that.
Well, it depends on how you want to add your next location. By the way, Carm, the word branch, it makes a ton of sense. But whether you want to grow a branch or add a shop or whatever terminology you want to use, it's how you want to do that. So if you want to go from the ground up, let's not talk about real estate ground up. Let's talk about starting with one person and entering a location and then marketing to build up that store. It's really painful right now. We know a couple handfuls of people that have tried to grow in that model, and you're probably looking at on average $200,000 to $300,000 investment at a minimum, to
A little bit more.
maybe more. It might be $500,000 now to build up the infrastructure, to add staff, to carry payroll for months or years, to market and to build that up, depending on your model. If you're going to blast the marketplace with really cheap oil changes just to get cars, that's a way to do it. Depends on your model. Now, acquisition, that's really the preferred method. I think this panel right here would agree that that's generally the best method, unless you're in a geographic area where there's a lot of market share and you have resources.
Right.
So let's talk about that real briefly. Acquisition. If you can get a seller of a store to carry you, which means they're financing you for a term and there's no banks or SBA involved, that can be a really good situation. Seek counsel on how to do that. But traditionally, the good opportunities probably aren't going to be that way. You may get a portion of the seller financing to carry a little small piece of it, maybe 10% or 15%, but you're going to have to go to a bank. So here's a general equation. We're going through looking at some acquisitions right now, getting some SBA pre-qualification. Here's the general rule. On a business acquisition, a bank with the SBA behind them guaranteeing the note is going to want 25% investment by the owner or the buyer and or the seller to make up 25%. And the SBA and the bank will fund 75%. So you need to start doing simple math, okay? If I can put 10% of a buy or of a purchase of my own money in, I can get the seller to finance 15%. And by the way, they're going to have to stand behind the bank in positioning. So if you default, they're going to have to wait till the SBA or the bank gets their money.
Right.
And then the bank will fund 75%. So do simple math. If they want $1 million for a business, you're going to have to put a minimum of 10% most likely on a 7A loan, and you can expect a $100,000 investment. But the beauty of that is, that same model, $1 million purchase at a 3 times earning multiple means that business should be cash flowing around $300,000 or $330,000. And you run simple math, take off your taxes, take off your debt service, you still should be able to earn enough cash to be cash flow from day one versus a ground up, branch addition in which you could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in the hole in 2 or 3 years down the road before you ever see $1 of profit. So that's a general overview.
Oh my God, I'm sitting here listening to this and I'm hearing all that stuff, 7% SBA, 20%, 15 here, 300 multiples. And I'm saying, I'm going to jump off the closest bridge.
Makes you want to go start a radio show instead, huh?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. Come on.
Yeah, Brian didn't talk about all the overruns in construction.
So
orders.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think it's those sobering thoughts that we need to have, which is the reason we're doing this. Where do you get help? Here I am. I got a successful place. I'm making 15%. I got a great team. The culture's right. And there's a ton of shops out there that are in the top echelon of our industry that really feel that they want to go to the next level. Where do they get help?
Well, if I can put a plug in it,
that guy right there.
Yeah, that's something that we feel at the Transformers Institute, we're on the leading edge of providing training for that exact thing. And whether you get my help or somebody else's help, I'm sure I'm not the only one out there. But man, do not do it alone. It is a tough journey, and you're going to run into things that you have never seen, thought you would see, experience. And so getting professional help and making that investment in yourself and in your team and in your infrastructure is vital to your success. I wish that I had myself 15 years ago when I started on the multi-store journey. I'd be talking to you from my beach mansion down in the Caribbean somewhere instead of from my office.
Yes, sir. Hey, as the average age of vehicles keeps rising, your customer's old engine or transmission's going to wear out. And when that day comes, Jasper will be the name to remember. Jasper's remanufactured products cost considerably less than a new vehicle. So it just makes sense to choose Jasper for your customers' drivetrain solutions. Thank you, Jasper, for making the Town Hall Academy possible. No, I didn't mean to put a shameless plug in there for you.
I appreciate that.
But it would have been, but you did, so great. Good for you. It goes back to the fact that many shop owners have really made a big pivot in their life, found a business coach. Those business coaches can absolutely help in an acquisition like this, and to even help test the waters and do an assessment. Is the business ready for that next level? Brian, you've said you need to be ready to accept small declines, even though you're ready to grow in your business. I love your theory. Can you explain that a little deeper as to how you help manage a business that was making 20% and now two that are only making 15?
Yeah. Well, again, I think this panel would agree. I know Greg and I think Dwayne, we've talked about this in the Transformers group. What is a reasonable standard of net profit when you have more than one location? Industry benchmarks for a single location are 20% net. If you can exceed that, then great. But we've compiled a lot of data that says to get beyond 15% per store, when you have more than one, it's just really tough. But, you can do simple math and say, if I get 20% of one business in net, but I can get 15% of two, that's, it's a bigger number at the end of the day. So here's a little tiny piece of advice that really helped me understand a growth mentality. I think most of us shop owners are very particular. Whether you're a technician that became a shop owner and the standard of technical care is through the roof, you will not let anything leave below that standard, or whether you're a front end guy and the customer interactions, whatever it is, we're OCD. So here's the advice. And I learned this years ago. Greg and I know share this as well. If you're not okay accepting 85 to 90% of the quality of what you could establish in a single store with you in it every day, if you cannot accept a little bit lower standard of quality when it comes to quality of service, sales, profits, capacity between all your stores, et cetera, growth might not be for you. Now, it's not to say that we don't set that 100% expectation, right? But you have to be okay if that degrades in any way. And that's the general thought process behind that advice. Greg, you want to chime in on that?
No, that's absolutely true. And Brian and I both sat in a class being taught by another multi-store operator that brought that topic up. And everybody in the room kind of cringed, because at that time, most of us were single store owners, and that you're attacking our ego. You're attacking, no, we can do that better. We can do that. And he said, look, everybody's tried, but that is a reality, or else you're going to put yourself in an early grave. So it is difficult. It is something that you have to accept. You don't want to, but if you think about it, you go to Chili's, and they're all over the country, and some of them you're going to get great service and great food, and the bathroom is spot on and clean, and everything's nice and painted, and the carpet's fresh. And you walk in another one, and things are worn out, and the servers are worn out, and the food's a little off from what you expect. That doesn't mean the whole Chili's chain is bad. It just means that whoever that owner of that company is knows that he's not going to have, or she, 100% at every single location. You do your best to do that, but if you can't swallow that pill, again, like Brian said, this is probably not something you should venture into. And both of us, because we are both OCD and perfectionists, as most everybody in our mastermind group is, it's definitely a challenge. And it boils back to the initial conversation of finding, training, hiring, retaining the best possible people we can.
Isn't it amazing? You're talking about OCD. Dwayne, how about you? Are you in that?
Oh, I fall right in line behind him. Without a doubt.
It's so amazing how there is kind of a profile or a trait amongst some just incredible leaders. So here I am. I'm thinking, wow, if I had a second store and a third store, I could share costs over all these multiple locations. And Brian, pretty much you said, don't plan on that. So how can I actually see the future of a business that I'm looking to create? And I'm really trying to push you into the pro forma. And not a lot of people understand what a pro forma is and how it's used.
It's a funny word. The first time I heard that was the SBA, and we need you to write a pro forma. And I'm like, pro's a good word. It's not con, right? So it's got to mean something.
Form, though, that's the bad word. Nobody likes filling out forms.
Right.
Yeah, you could think of it in a way as a budget. Budgets function a little bit differently because budgets give benchmarks for your leadership or management to try to fall within in the operations of a business. A pro forma is, what do I expect reasonably to happen after an acquisition of a business? So there's when we do them, we have a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and we kind of can follow somebody's profit and loss statement, enter it into a spreadsheet, and then we can start to move pieces around. The nice thing about like Dwayne's situation, Greg's situation, where you've got 3, 4, 5 stores, is you have a standard of normality, what I would call, reasonable expectations in each store about what are my office supplies, what should my rent be, below the line expenses. And then you can do math about what kind of profit percentage are they getting on parts, et cetera. So your pro forma is nothing more than a projection, say for the end of the year when you buy a business, and then the second and third year that you're going to look at and say, okay, this is what they're doing now. Can I expect that to continue? Is there upside? And if there's upside, where can I expect that upside to be? Whether it's I can increase sales by increased marketing, I can increase my margins by charging more, or I can reduce some of these expenses through economy of scale. That means having sharing expenses over multiple shops, or just being smarter and more prudent with the money.
Business plan, so important too.
Well, I don't know about you guys. For me, business plan is kind of a guideline. And anybody that's been an entrepreneur knows that business plans can go every direction from true north to 359 degrees the other direction.
Will the SBA look for one?
What's that?
Will the SBA look for one?
I think in my experience, we've done one acquisition through SBA. I think they wanted a little bit of a strategy plan, but when I used the pro formas to just make line items about the expectations of what we were going to change, and then a basic overview of why this was a good acquisition and stuff like that, they didn't need a formal business plan like when you start a business and get a bank loan and they need like a 50-page or 20-page document.
That they never read, by the way.
It depends on your situation.
Yeah.
I don't know. You guys, Dwayne, do you agree with that?
I think if you're looking for a new financial institute, you need some sort of a business plan for them. But once you have that relationship, they don't look at that. They want to see your projections or your pro forma.
Right.
Ours are projections. They want to know what's it going to do, and then they're going to look at your history. And when you have 4 or 5 shops, you can show them this is what we do. These. The margins are the margins. If this is what you do at 1 location or at 5, it's more likely what you're going to do at number 6. So they look at that, and so that relationship, that's why that's another important relationship to have before you try to expand, is a financial one.
Hey, I'm so glad we jumped into financials. In fact, we probably need 2 hours to really get deep in it. But Greg, Transformers Mastermind, Transformers Institute, I think is exactly the right name. You guys started because you were multi-shop owners and you built a great organization. So it's not a plug for you at all, but the fact of the matter is it's a resource in our industry and people should consider it. So Dwayne, let me jump. We have a hard stop here at 45 after the hour. And I want to really talk about team buy-in and the leadership piece that I know you really excel at. Give us a feel for how you have develop the leaders inside the company that have so bought in to where Dynamic is going?
I guess the best way to get buy-in is to have an open mind, to listen. Now, as after we opened our 4th location, myself, Lee and Jose, we stepped aside, and our location managers actually run the stores. They know our feelings, our morals, what we believe is the right thing to do, and they have input and a lot of say. And I feel if you want anybody to have buy-in, they have to have say some way. And if their say isn't monetary or where they own a part of the business, they at least have to be able to feel like it is their business. And I feel that our location, and I really call them team leaders. I'm almost done with the word manager anymore. Our team leaders, they have ownership in their heart. They know that if they decide this is what we want to do, and they have good reasons for it, we're behind them, because, the collective group is definitely smarter than just the three owners are, when you bring them all together. And I feel if they feel they have a say and they feel they have ownership in it, the buy-in is there. But you got to listen and really listen and actually try. Worst can happen, it fails. So you try again. It's not going to sink you don't let it sink the ship. You keep trying, and you let them have opportunities. And I believe that because of that, they're with you. They're going to go with you because it's your all's company now.
So what happens, Greg, that we're getting ready to expand the teams behind us, and we're going to have some overage? We're going to be paying for staff training. I run one of the shops. Does my P&L suffer from that extra payroll, or do you work it?
It is. You have to look at it just like buying a new lift or a marketing campaign. Anytime you're going to grow your business, you have to make an investment into it. And so you're investing in the team ahead of time. And again, my story on store number 6, I did not spend enough time, energy, and money to have a solid enough team before I opened that store. And it did not work out as well. So moving forward, having those people work within your organization, getting that DNA so that's the same as what you and the strong business you already have, it's just going to be part of it. And hopefully you're making enough margin that you can absorb that. But, I think of business kind of like a stair step where, you get to a certain level and you're making a certain amount of money. And I talked about this in a couple of my seminars where a lot of shop owners get to that point. Maybe as a technician, they made $80,000 a year, and now they own a shop and they make $150,000 or $200,000, and they go out and they buy every toy. They got a bigger house, and now they're, the American way, right? You spend everything that you make, and they don't leave themselves any margin, and they have to make that certain amount of money to provide for their lifestyle. Instead of going, you know what, I'm going to take a longer term approach to this. I'll continue to live off 80 or 100,000. I'm going to bank that other money, put it away to grow my business so that one day I'm making $1 million a year. Very few people kind of think that way. And so when I teach, I always say, live on a personal budget. Just because your P&L says you make $200,000 doesn't mean you got to take $200,000 out of your account. Put yourself on a reasonable amount of payroll, maybe some bonuses if you do really well, but you want to leave a lot of capital in your business if your plan is to go multi-store and to grow. Other people are said, hey, you know what? I'm making good money. I don't have any desire to go past that. And that's fine. It's a personal choice. But man, do not go into thinking that you're going to go multi-store without being willing to make that financial investment in your people.
And the opportunities, guys, today are great for that. Yes?
Yes. There's a study done in 2015 that 58% of mom and pop shops want to be out of the business. Now, that doesn't mean they want to close their doors. Some of them are just saying, you know what, I'm going to close my doors, sell to a key employee, put it on the market, liquidate, whatever that looks like. But that is a huge amount of turnover. And that the prediction was for 2020, which is right around the corner. So now not all those shops are going to be great acquisitions. Some of them will be, hey, you know what, send me your master tech and your database and your phone number, because that's all that's really that has value in it. But I'm telling you, we are on the verge of a major change within the automotive industry, which is why you see Mavis and Carl Icahn and the likes out there scooping up shops. I mean, Those guys are smart business people.
We should probably come back and just do an entire episode on strategies of acquisitions and how they work. And of course, this whole branch piece is important. Hey, why purchase a Jasper quality remanufactured product? It's their people. A Jasper associate is dedicated to high quality customer service, committed to excellence, professional, and has pride of ownership. And that Jasper, a 100% associate-owned company. Great company, great people. Love Jasper. Hey, it is that time, 1 minute before the hard stop at the
Wow,
45 after
that went
the hour.
fast.
Impressive, Carm. Way
It
to
go
go.
fast, and and Brian's got an important engagement he's got to get to, and so we're gonna let him go. And usually I go around the room, but we don't have time for a 2 or 3 minute summary from each of you. But I promise, if this thing is going to be as well listened to as I believe it has, maybe we need to come back and do round 2, or maybe we need to have you guys back and really talk about acquisition strategy and how it works with Branch. I love the talk about the SBA and all the different strategies and how to buy multiples, but maybe would you come back if we need to do this?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And,
I need to come back, Carm, because we got to talk about SOP and standard operating procedure.
yeah, we never got there.
You gotta grow the right way, or you're gonna fail.
That's right. Yeah, if you don't have those systems in place, you'd be crazy to put the key in a new door.
Agreed.
All right. Hey, guys, thanks so much. Town Hall Academy. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Ciao.
Thank you, guys.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys.